What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favelli coming at you with the certified fantabulous Mr. Grant Hughes. The offseason look-ahead train, soldiers onward, folks. We are on to the Denver Nuggets, who lost in the second round, and now they have an offseason to go through, Grant. Are you ready to dive in?
Let's dive in like a wild-eyed Russell Westbrook attempt on the rim.
Hopefully we will have more makes than misses.
Let's turn it right over.
Okay, so I want to start with the Jokic quote because he was right when he said afterwards. I think a lot of people, I saw a lot of Kevin Durant trade scenarios out there, but Jokic said, we definitely need to figure out a way to get more depth. It seems like the teams that have longer rotations, the longer benches, are the ones winning. You look at Indiana and OKC and Minnesota, and they have been great examples of that. I tend to agree with him. The Knicks are really kind of the only exception right now. And when you go to kind of look at, pick your favorite catch-all, and then look at the average of teammates, like when you look at the top 25 stars, there's like 2 or 3 that have average teammates in the net negative. Nikola Jokic is one of them. But all the teams that are kind of standing, whether it's Jalen Brunson, Shea, Anthony Edwards, like those guys are in the positives. And so I think would you agree with Jokic's overall, not even just in regard to the Nuggets, but do you think that depth has become more of a postseason weapon than before?
Well, the contrarian in me wants to push back and say, like, well, you need depth a lot less if your starting power forward has 2 good hamstrings and your starting small forward has 2 good shoulders. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'm working big to small a little bit more with this problem, like of the talent issue, because like, I don't know. The Knicks aren't deep. They made it around farther than the Nuggets did. Although, like, the Knicks do have. I mean, I like the guys that actually do play off the Knicks bench a lot better than anybody that plays off of Denver's bench. So I think he's probably right. And I guess too, to kind of get us pivoting into like what can the Nuggets do or what should they do. It's a lot easier to get depth than it is to like get another star or you know what I mean? Like to solve this talent issue at the top end of the roster. It's not going to be easy for them. Spoiler. It's not going to be easy for Denver to add talent anywhere. But I think it's more manageable if you can say like, well, if we just hit on this minimum guy or something and he can become a better 6th, 7th, 8th guy than what we've got, that's not impossible. But you know, if you're thinking of improving at the top of the roster, it's going to be Michael Porter Jr. and pray, like hope something comes together.
Well, in some way, that's why getting depth could be harder than pulling off a bigger move. But before we get to that, I think we'll start with the Jokic extension. He's eligible to sign a 3-year, $212.5 million extension. That would pay him, Grant, $76 million in the final season, which was be 2029, 2030, contrary to 2039, 2030, like I have up on the screen. He'd be 34 at that point. You absolutely offer it. And the assumption, at least that was per the reporting at ESPN, people believe he's going to sign it. He could just wait and sign a 4-year, $293.4 million extension next summer. In which case, by the way, in the final year, the numbers it'll be less than 35% of the cap, but he'd be making $81.2 million in the final year of that deal in his age 35 season. That runs through 2030-31. I guess my point here is, do you think there's a chance that he doesn't sign it as a way of, I'm going to preface it with this. This is not, should the Nuggets be worried that Jokic is going to leave? It's kind of just the opposite. If I am Jokic, however, I know that all these players have just been signing extensions because then you can sign another one in 2 years, and that's kind of the new way of maximizing your earning potential. If I'm him, I'm not signing it because they're going to max me out next summer at whatever deal I want anyway, no matter what happens. And he's not going to agitate. That's not his style, it doesn't seem like. But keep the pressure on the front office to continue to earn your loyalty by, hey, we can't go into this offseason and do things like not, materially change up let's say the back half of our rotation. And they've already, I'm not saying David Adelman isn't the right guy, but making him your head coach before having a front office figurehead in place, that's weird. And it seems like it's becoming more common in the NBA for some reason, which I also don't understand.
The Kings love to do it. That's maybe not a good blueprint to follow. That's their favorite thing to do is get the coach top executive cycle backwards. I don't know. My first thought was like, I think he'll do extension wise whatever creates the least amount of uncertainty or hassle or headache or controversy. So it's like I would believe that he'll just sign the extension that's put in front of him as soon as it's put in front of him, and it's like, cool, I don't want to think about this anymore. That's me projecting a personality onto someone that like we really don't know, but all indications
That
are
is his
that
personality,
that
though.
seems, from what we know, right, or
Yeah.
from what we've heard and what he's talked about, that seems like the likely outcome.
Well, the deal he's currently on, do you remember when they asked him about it a few years ago? Are you going to sign? And he was like, oh, yeah, like, why not? Yeah, I'll just sign it. So, like, no one asked him about it, I don't think, this
Yeah.
time. So I feel like if they did, my guess would be he'd have the same response. I'm just saying if I were him,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to leave Denver, but I'm making, especially after the coaching upheaval and the front office changeover and the dynamics behind the scenes, I'm like, no, like, I'm applying silent pressure to the You're always under
Sure.
pressure because you have Jokic, but I'm not going to give them the stability that comes with just knowing the best player alive is going to sign whatever contract whenever you give it to him.
Can we talk about we started this with a quote from him. I don't think we've talked about this one. When he was asked after the Nuggets were eliminated, do you think this group can win a championship? And he's like, well, we didn't, so we can't. Basically was his response. It's like, can everybody just speak as bluntly as he and like that's a real win. I know maybe there's some like language, not a language barrier, but like it's you could interpret that as him saying like, could we win a championship? He's like, no, we just got eliminated. Obviously that's not possible. They don't let us back into the tournament just because we want,
Right.
I don't think that was it. I just like the just complete, like, I don't think, and then he said something like, I don't like to think about ifs, which is like, God, I love this guy. He's like, yeah, we didn't win it, so we can't. Like, are you saying like we should have tried harder and that might have done it? Like I wanted to flag that because I've been meaning to bring that up with you the last couple of times we've recorded.
Do you think that's kind of the impact of 1 year of playing with Russell Westbrook is just kind of turned him into just
Sure, it's like either it happened or it didn't, and that's it. No, anyway, yeah, let's talk about what the Nuggets have to kind of wrangle with this offseason, because it's like we led with, it's gonna be hard to add talent. It's gonna be hard to not lose talent, honestly.
Yeah, so they're about 4.7 million into the first apron. Grant and I project per his proprietary metrics. That's 11.6 million into the tax overall to 13 players. It does assume that Russell Westbrook and Dario Saric pick up their player options. Russ, I could see him if maybe they say they would bring him back on a 1+1, and then that lowers his hit to the actual team. But like Saric is picking up that player, he would be that would. Like, why? He's picking up the player.
He's not coming close to that money anyplace else. No chance.
Aside from the Jokic extension, they do have Christian Braun and Peyton Watson up for rookie scale extensions. I probably want to spend a little bit of time on that in terms of let's spend a little bit of time on it, Grant. How important is it for players, like having the players of that caliber locked down versus should we just play the restricted free agency game with them, especially given the way that the restricted free agency game has played out in recent years? And I think we would both, it's not a matter of, well, who do you prioritize? The answer is Christian Braun there. He's just showed more. But how do you like both of them at the same, it's weird, and they're both important, but a lot of the importance, at least when it comes to Watson, is very much theoretical or overstated. And so like just how do you view that? Like, do you expect an extension to get done? Or if you're the Nuggets, how aggressive are you going to be in trying to lock down, let's say, Christian Braun specifically?
I think, again, I think this will be a case where the CBA and all the aprons and stuff are going to change behavior, or they should change behavior, because if I'm Denver, I'm not extending either of them. I'm going to just hope that restricted free agency is a powerful enough tool that I will get a better deal. And this is especially in the context of, I think Bobby Marks, ESPN's Bobby Marks, I don't know what the question was that was asked of him, but he was discussing an extension for Christian Braun and threw out the figure of a $30 million starting salary, which is like, yeah, I mean, he's a starter on a good team and he keeps getting better, but like, I just, I'm not in a hurry, and the cap's going up, so 30 million isn't what 30 million used to be. I still am not jumping at the first chance to pay my fourth and like seventh best players early, given the constraints that the Nuggets have. Like, I mean, so Brown's cap hold next summer would be like 14 million, I think. So you're going to bump that up. Like, you're going to 2x that. Like, I don't know. And maybe it's certainly teams will have more money to spend next year. So the danger of offer sheets being too high for you to match arises. But I'm now of the posture I'm taking if I'm running a team, especially like a contender or something close to it, is like I'm not doing anything before I have to with like non-essential guys. Like I think like I'm just gonna wait. Restricted free agency it does provide leverage. It does provide some negotiating power. I think you got to use that stuff more now more than ever, right? Like it's just too hard if you commit to money before you have to for guys that are not the absolute top part of your roster.
Right, and even I think so. You throw out the $30 million number, and that's like 17 under 18% of the projected salary cap in season one. But like, if you're gonna make 17% of the salary cap, you better be close to a bankable player when it's going to matter. And for Christian Braun, like you kind of know what he's gonna do defensively at this point. But the offense is still, it's a wild card. Like he ended up shooting, what was it, 30% from three in the playoffs. So you can't be like this offensive, I don't want to even say offensive liability, but like you don't want to be giving someone who's not draining threes at a high clip in the playoffs when it matters most, 17% of your salary cap. Like that is considered a weak point. No, he's not necessarily someone that you could pick on or that you're going to play off the floor, but like given an alternative of, and with Peyton Watson, I don't even know what I would give him if I was Denver. If he came in, it was like, yeah, I'll sign for 4 and 40. Yeah, I'll pounce because that's
Sure.
But you can't. I don't even know that he's shown enough to bet that you should go 12% of the salary cap, like or whatever $20 million would be. So that's really interesting, and I just don't. And you also have to project forward as to, well, knowing that both of these guys will cost more money. Do you look at moving one of them as part of a different deal? And it would be more likely, I would think, Peyton Watson, because the fact of the matter is if you can afford both of them, something has probably gone terribly wrong to ruin their value.
Right. Yeah. Good point. I mean, Watson is fascinating because, like, I think, athletically and defensively, there is a lot there. And so, I mean, and Braun has the durability factor, which also matters for a Nuggets team that's just going to be thin. But like Watson in particular couldn't get major consistent rotation minutes, and both of the guys that play ahead of him were hurt. So you can bank on some improvement from him, but like, how much better does he have to get to where, like, at least you would play him over an injured Michael Porter Jr. or Aaron Gordon? Like, there's still more to go. So like, I think, again, I don't think you can pay Watson based on what, like, the high end of what you think he'll be able to do in a couple years, which is how guys very commonly used to get paid. And I think you have to look at, like, what did you do for us when we desperately needed help in this series that's, a week old? And they, like, try to kind of pay him that way. Because it's like, it's not like the Nuggets have this 3 to 5 year runway. Like, they're going to have to be major changes way before that.
Right. Michael Porter Jr. is also extension eligible. I do not expect him to sign one. That would be surprising. And just as a housekeeping note, if they are going to make moves, they can trade up to one, like, guaranteed first round pick. They have some swaps to include, but they can trade 2031 or 2032. That gets me to my question of, and looking at what Nikola Jokic said about the depth, I agree with you in theory. That's easier to acquire depth. But if you're not, like, pieces that aren't costing a ton of money, in the Nuggets case, though, you almost wonder if it's the flip side. Because the challenges they run into is Michael Porter Jr. would be the collateral damage just because of the money he makes, and you can't. Murray, I know people's thoughts on him. They might not like the contract. He's just too integral to this team offensively. And the dynamic with Jokic is it's generational, like just that two-man game between them. Aaron Gordon, indispensable. You're not doing anything with Jokic. And so the only other person who makes real money is Michael Porter Jr. Or, I mean, you could say Zeke Naji, but like that contract's underwater. And that you run into the problem of, one, Michael Porter Jr.'s salary is so large that when you get into matching money, another team has to, one, view his contract as a net positive, and then two, be willing to send you like two guys back. Because if you're getting one guy, I don't really know what you're doing. Like, if it was, look, I think if you could get Kevin Durant for your picks, Michael Porter Jr., and then it's Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, and I think you need another smaller salary in there to make the money work, and you need a third team. Yep. Sure, because you're getting rid of that case of 4 players, but if only one of them's a rotation player, it's a wash. But even if Phoenix said, we'll accept Peyton Watson and Michael Porter Jr. as the base compensation, figure out the money of the other teams, you're getting rid of 2 rotation players for 1, and Kevin Durant's like going to be 37. So that's risky. But now if you're saying, well, you could trade a smaller salary to get someone who log actual minutes, if you're the Nuggets, do you have the gall, or is it reckless to say Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, and we'll put a first-round pick on the table just to deepen our rotation? So you're not getting – you can get someone, I guess, that makes some type of money in that, because Saric and Zeke Naji are going to combine to make like over 13, 14 million, whatever it is. But like that's a pretty big cost when you're looking at from the Nuggets perspective of a distant first-round pick to give up to get someone to fill out the 6th or 7th spot in your rotation at best.
Yeah, have you tried? I messed around with specifically a Durant and Porter Jr. trade, and I'm roping in the Nets or whoever else. It's still not easy. Like it's still pretty hard to make that work. I think certainly like the Nets need to be compensated, and it's like, okay, so Denver is sending what to them, and the Suns are sending what, like a couple seconds? Is that enough to just kind of be the helper? I would, if the offer was basically like, forget the mechanics of it, Watson and Porter Jr., and I'm the Nuggets and I'm getting Durant back, I'm doing that in a heartbeat. I really like, I think you have to, and you just have to be confident that you can find someone on the minimum that will give you 90% of what Peyton Watson did, which is not a ridiculous, like it's very possible, especially if, you're not a huge market team, but you're the Nuggets. You can say, hey, all things being equal, free agent, you get to come play with Jokic, and we will have a role for you because we were thin and we just gave up 2-for-1 rotation players. So like that might get you somewhere. But yeah, you would be like, that's crazy. You're already thin. You can't give up your best shooter and like the only projectable young, like might get a lot better talent you have. But I think you just have to do that. That's where they are. Like that's the level of move that seems like, yeah, I think that works like for Denver.
Yeah. And it's funny because I actually was writing something about a potential construction, and I think you could look at it as, okay, if you're the Nets, they're the team that I'm just going to involve as a third party.
Right.
If you were to send them Peyton Watson, is that enough to get them to take on Zeke Naji and or Dario Saric? And then if you're Phoenix, let's say, I think the Nets would consider that.
Yeah.
And Phoenix might not love Peyton Watson just because he's extension eligible, but if they want Peyton Watson, that changes the mechanics. But is Phoenix going to accept, let's say, a swap in 2026 and Michael Porter Jr. and then one of Denver's first-round picks? Is that like Kevin Durant in that scenario is probably forcing his way to Denver if that's the compensation? The other way you could concoct it is if you were the Nets, would you just take on Michael Porter Jr.?
That seems less likely to me because I think if this is a Durant trade, it feels to me like the Suns are the ones that really want him, that want Porter Jr., I guess,
right. Well, they just wanted to cut a bunch of money, and so you're taking back Naji and Saric, Peyton Watson, let's say a swap and a first-round pick, but it would be predicated on they want to save a ton of money, and they're kind of leaning into that sounds like a gap year situation, and it's, did they reacquire the rights to their own pick, which is why it's a stretch. But even the stretch might be like, do the Nets want to burn their, what is it, $35 million of their cap space on just taking in Michael Porter Jr.? Because he's not going to ruin a rebuilding job, and he really stretches the floor. And then you could kind of see, well, is there anything more to him, like in a different type of role? But that's a lot of, it's only 2 years, and he's not super old, but that's just a lot of money to say we're going to set our cap space on fire, and we're not getting any compensation for it.
I could see the Nets possibly considering that if it seemed realistic that you could then trade Porter down the line for positive value, which is like maybe as an expiring in a year or something. Like, I don't know, like, that number is still pretty big. He would have to stay healthy and be really productive, and then I do think you probably could get something else for Porter on the way out. So that's always kind of nice. You get something for bringing him in, and you get something for sending him out. And if you're Brooklyn and the timeline's very long, I think you can probably think in those terms. Like, we're thinking about the deal after the deal with this guy. Like, that's possible. I just imagine that Phoenix still wants to, try to compete, but I just don't know.
Moral of the story is it's almost easier for the Nuggets to pull off that type of a trade just because of the salaries they have involved rather than, in theory, again, Naji and or Saric plus assets but are you willing to give up the few assets that you have to make a move that on the grand scale that player might or probably won't crack your closing lineup,
Right.
that's tough. And so then it leaves you with what can they do in free agency? And so if they want to use the mini MLE, they're going to have to stay beneath the second apron. They have about $7.1 million in wiggle room right now beneath that. Again, projecting those options get picked up. If you want to fill out an entire roster, that gets really tight. The other thing I would point out is I know that it's going to be a different front office. Their last two mini MLE signings, you've kind of seen like those can blow up in your face or just not be anything, which is why a lot of the teams end up not using that, especially if they're a tax team. And so with Denver, there's already the Bruce Brown stuff. He posted about David Adelman getting hired. I don't know if anyone's watched Bruce. This isn't even me being patronizing. I don't know if anyone's watched Bruce Brown lately. One, he hasn't played a ton because he was injured for a huge part of this year. Just doesn't look like the same player. Maybe he gets some of the Jokic magic back coming to Denver. But like, I even gave the thought of, let's say the mini MLE is available to him. Are we sure like New Orleans just doesn't want like another trade placeholder to where they'll be like, well, we'll give you $10 million, and Bruce Brown's not in a position to just be like, yeah, no, I'm going to give up that extra $4.3 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's at least you've got something above the minimum. Although getting hard capped at the second apron is, I mean, I don't know how much of a difference that makes. I would like to avoid a hard cap if I can, if I'm Denver. But like, could you get, I don't know, like Gary Trent with that 5.7? Like, I don't, maybe not. Like, it's a raise from what he got last year.
Yeah, because Malik Beasley went off and had a really good year in Milwaukee, I'll say, last year, and then he only gets $6 million from the Pistons. And so if like maybe like, but I'm sitting here saying like Gary Trent Jr. should get at least half of the non-taxpayer mid level, right? Maybe I'm just wrong.
I don't know. Well, yeah, those are, and is that even the kind of player you want? I guess maybe.
I was going to ask, what's your, like, when you're getting into, we know depth, but like, what are kind of the biggest pain points for this team they need to target?
I mean, if the starting five is intact, like I think if you move Porter, then like obviously you just need more shooting. Like that makes it easier. But as it is,
even if you don't move
that's
Porter?
The question. Like, because then you're talking about, we are just talking about depth pieces, because I don't think there's anyone you trade for that doesn't involve you giving up a starter where you're like, I'm going to play this guy over Braun, for example. Like that Brown's going to start. The starting five is going to be what it is unless you trade Porter Jr. I think, right? That seems like the most likely scenario. So you gotta have, you just have to have like more, like a 2-3 or like a combo forward with some athleticism. Basically, I'm like kind of Watson-y, but like can shoot it. Like all the players you would talk about, like you can't get. Like, I want a Peyton Watson who can shoot. Okay, that guy's like a $40 million player.
You may have just described like Trey Murphy, but not Trey Murphy's not the same level of defender.
Yeah. So I'm that's a good. I mean, I guess you'd say, okay, let's go through what you'd normally. Okay, DeAndre Jordan's their backup center. Like, okay, they need more depth there. It's like, well, Aaron Gordon's going to play backup 5 in the game, and also the minutes that matter.
I'm like still a little Deron Holmes pilled. I know he tore his Achilles, but the idea of like a floor spacing big man who could protect the rim, I'm like,
right. Well, and he's another guy that if you're looking to make moves, like some team might value, like the Nets might value him, but like maybe. The salary matching, he makes so little that it's hard to say. But like that is a piece they could move unless you think he really is going to matter in the rotation next year.
I had thought because they do. I think you could use a backup because Holmes that's going to be his de facto rookie season, so you don't know how he's going to look. He's coming off a major injury as well, so they do still need to get some type of a backup big. But I've kind of wondered, like, does Chris Boucher go for the minimum this year, or is Toronto going to make him a lifer and build him a statue? That's what they should do.
Probably.
What does Day'Ron Sharpe go for? Like, those are guys that probably should get more in the minimum, but they could be useful names to monitor. And the other need, I would agree with all the needs you said. The one that I think you didn't mention is just an upgrade from the Russell Westbrook spot to where you want a ball handler and a decision maker behind Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. You need that. I'll frame it this way. You need that player to be less destructive than Russell Westbrook can be. I know what he can do at his peak, but like his nadirs are legitimately destructive.
You should not win or lose games because of Russell Westbrook, given like his spot in the rotation. But like he, more than almost anybody that comes off of a bench for a team, like is capable of actually losing you a game, which is just like the highs and lows are just too far apart and it feels dangerous. The problem is like, can you go get a minimum? I guess you'd still call Russ a point guard, even though a lot of the time he's just not in that role because the Nuggets have Jokic. But like, can you get somebody for that cheap that can give you the highs that Westbrook gives you? I don't think so. But you'll just you'll have like a you'll just sort of like, I don't know, if you go get Tyus Jones or something, it's like, well, that's going to be a lot steadier. But like, he also might just not be able to play in a second round series or something like that. You know, like you're just making concessions no matter what.
Can I give you two names that I thought of? I was trying to think it through the lens of, could these guys potentially play in the playoffs for them, and would they fall into the mini MLE territory? I have two names here. Chris Paul. That'd be kind of fun, right? Or does he dominate the ball too much for you? His shooting this year was absurd.
That's the thing. The shooting would really matter. And I think like, I think I do like that. I like that a lot better than Russ, just for comparison's sake.
No, are you sure?
I just talked about his highs. I thought I set it up pretty well.
The other name I had, and this is, you get into, I mean, Chris Paul's old, but you get an injury risk here too. And I feel like he'll get more than the mini MLE, but Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah. He's going to be pretty sought after, don't you think?
Yeah, I thought that too. I was also wondering, it would require them playing, I think, like, we're going to play ultra huge, and Aaron Gordon's going to be our de facto 3 at points. Mm-hmm. What if he's just looking like, because we know this team's going to be cutting costs, can you sell Al Horford on the mini MLE to just come ring chase in Denver, like alongside / behind Nikola Jokic, or is that not a look that you want to? Because I don't know that he checks one of their needs, which is also probably their like smallest. Like, you have Jokic at center, so focusing on a backup center. But if you think they could play together, and we know they like to run size. I mean, him and Jokic and Porter at the 3, sure, but could you get away with Gordon at the 3? Is that just overkill? Is that a waste of the mini MLE at that point?
No, I think if the Nuggets got Horford for the mini MLE, we would give their offseason an A+ and just move on.
I would too.
I think that's, you're right that it's like, well, do you really, like, can he fit? Do you really? It's like, no, he solves a lot of problems. And like, okay, so Gordon and Horford are your 3-4. Like, those guys can both shoot. That's fine. And they can guard their positions. That's fine. That'll work.
And I have a trade pitch that I don't know if I support it, but I just wanted to see what you would think of it. But I did want to ask you first. I saw a lot of people like talking about what the Nuggets needed, and it was framed through they just need like all this defensive help. And I don't know if I'm reading too much into the Oklahoma City Thunder series, but I came away just thinking, yeah, okay, they could use more two-way players but when I was thinking two-way, they really just need some more consistent offensive juice. And it was, that was a big moment when Julian Strother went off, but you can't count him to do that every game, and then you can't count on him on defense. And so it's not that I'm saying it needs to be offensively focused, but I do find myself wondering if they can get more dynamic on the offensive end more than I'm wondering. Like, we kind of saw that they were able to lock in defensively.
Yep. Yeah. I think the defense can be and was good enough, you know? Like, what the difference in that series, if you want to really just cherry pick stuff, like, is the Nuggets needed a guy like Strother, or they needed Strother to do what he did twice instead of just once in that series, and maybe the Nuggets just win it. So like, that's kind of a low bar. The other thing too, we haven't really given a lot of consideration to the idea of organic improvement. So like, could the Strothers and Pickett's and Tysons and Holmes, I guess, Holmes. We've talked about Day'Ron Sharp and Day'Ron Holmes, and so now I'm just going to confuse them for the rest of the time. But we're talking about Holmes. Could there be, if you're whoever ends up running the Nuggets, could you imagine that person coming in and saying like, I actually think the 4 or 5 young guys we have might just be good enough to get a little better, and then we don't have the same issues anymore? Or are we just kind of foreclosing on that now?
Are you hiring Jalen Pickett's uncle? What is that?
It's really more Strother, I think, and then the unknown of Holmes. But like, that is teams think that way sometimes when the options all suck for like importing talent. You just say like, oh, we kind of like our developmental guys. Like 1 or 2 of them's going to pop. Is Strother going to pop? Like, do you think that's a possibility, or is it Denver is never going to give him the chance, and that's been the problem? I don't lean that way, but that happens sometimes.
He seems to, so having someone who I do try to like read and listen to a lot of Nugget centric stuff, it seems like he's someone who's more intriguing to us from the 10,000 foot view than people who are like more intimately covering them. But there's just something about the way that he can get off shots where it's, this team needs that.
The type of players we're suggesting maybe they go out and look for, if you're just talking scouting reports, kind of sound a lot like what Strother is supposed to be, you know? Like, it's always dangerous. You're right. I think we are just like, well, he's this old and he can do these things because that was his pre-draft scouting report. He's barely played. But if you watch him every day and you're not in, I'm just going to believe you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I'm going to believe the night-to-night Nuggets fans that are like, he ain't it. I'll believe them over my opinion.
Who says no to this trade? Peyton Watson, the Nuggets first round pick that they could trade, and then you're using the Saric and Najee money. So you're not going to get hard capped as part of this deal if that's if that does it for you. For Kobe White.
I think Denver should do that. So I guess I'm saying the Bulls say no, but I don't know if they would.
So it'd be Watson in the pick as the primary compensation. I don't know if that's enough for Kobe White. He's going to be an expiring contract.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, does including a swap move the needle of that offer at all? Is then that overkill from Denver's perspective?
That's like everything they can, that's almost everything, right? If you use the first that the 20, 31 or 32 is going out and the 26 swap, is that the one that it was say 26 and that's going out and Watson.
If it's the 26 swap, Denver,
it may
to
not
me, that's
even,
sort of
yeah.
like the Bulls trying to win the press conference. Like, oh, look at what we got
Right.
that we're never
That's a
going to
good
use.
That's a good point. Maybe. White would be. You could talk me into Kobe White virtually anywhere. Like that feels like the through line so far of any Kobe White discussions. But I would do that if I'm Denver.
Even just knowing we're going to run into he has to be paid, Braun has to be paid. You're kind of, we know that things are going to change between now and the 26 offseason, but now we're looking at it going, so things are going to change and we just burned all of our best assets.
Yeah. I mean, that's where they're at though. Like they're a step short of like Milwaukee, like a year behind Milwaukee because Milwaukee won it. What was it, 1 year before the Nuggets did? And now that the Bucks can't do anything and the Nuggets can do a thing and then next time they won't be able to do anything. I think that's just, if you're going to try to keep this a contender, you're just those are your choices. They're all bad. They're all asset depleting.
But I would say what's more appealing is I did come out of that Thunder series thinking, okay, the Nuggets were closer to being a title team this year than I thought. Yeah. Because there just came a point, right around the time that they fired Michael Malone, where it seemed as if, no, they're so far away and maybe they should consider, do you look at moving Jamal Murray to Orlando and just seeing what you could get to that? I don't think they need to head down that path. And so for me, from my perspective, I'm saying you don't want to do anything stupid just for the sake of doing it. But they are good enough to say, you know what? We're going to roll this dice and go with the Kobe White type trade. That would be, look, we solved it. Kobe White and then sign Al Horford with the mini MLE. How many variations of trade for Derek White, sign Al Horford are we going to throw out this offseason? And that's the perfect offseason.
Every contender will be included in that conversation.
And I want to get out in front of this with Nuggets fans because we've gotten it from other fan bases after our Derek White trade talks. You cannot get Derek White for expiring salary and 1 first-round pick. That is not something that is going to – I'm not even – trying to be condescending or dunk on anyone. That is just a lot of scenarios I've seen thrown out there. It's just not going to happen. So the Nuggets cannot trade for Derek White. It's not happening.
Does not seem likely. I would just say last thing is you have Jokic in his prime and you have a couple other very expensive players. If you're not really thinking about mortgaging everything you have for 1 or 2 more shots, you're kind of going about it wrong because Denver, you're never. Everyone who's listening to this in your lifetime, the Nuggets will never have a player better than Jokic. That. This is it. This is the pinnacle of the Nuggets experience for the next however many decades. So you gotta. This is, and it's even different than the Warriors owe it to Steph who's 36. It's no, there's an argument to be made that you kind of need to think about the next little while. Jokic is younger than that and better than Steph right now. So you have to go for it. That's all there is to it.
And to be fair, our argument to the Warriors was you go for it with Steph. So if we're going to say that about the 36, 37-year-old Steph Curry, you do it with the 30-year-old Jokic. Very quickly, is there any scenario, just because I think some people will suggest this, I would assume mostly not Nuggets fans, there's no way that you trade Jamal Murray and get better, right? I was even trying to think of, I think Orlando might give you Jalen Suggs and a pick and Tristan Da Silva or something, but are you better defensively? I guess sure, but I just can't find that. If you were trying to target cost cutting and draft equity, yes, you could do. I think you could do a lot of things with Jamal Murray, but I think it will be suggested nationally at some point if it's not being suggested already, and I just don't view that as. I don't even necessarily view trading Michael Porter Jr. as the move. I think the move
Right.
we outlaid with Kobe White, where it's can you make some type of a trade with those smaller contracts, include an asset, and then use your mini MLE, and you hope to expand your rotation by 2 players, which would have made a world of difference in this postseason, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think you can get better trading Murray. I don't think while acknowledging he did kind of show again that he can hit a playoff level that's just way above his career and regular season level. Like that's just a thing we should expect now. But like that's not to say that his contract is viewed as like, well, that's right for what he is as a player. So like maybe it's as simple as saying like he's just worth more to Denver than he could possibly be to any other team, and so that's why you can't get positive value for him.
Do you have anything else on these Nuggets, or are you ready to take us out of here?
I will just say I'm ecstatic for when they get Kobe White and Al Horford. That'd be a lot of fun. Sorry to all the other teams we're going to
send the same exact 2 players to.
Yeah, right. Thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe wherever you are consuming this fine podcast and video content. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up there. Make sure you're subscribed there. Leave us a comment. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jared Allen.